Good day to you. You know, Facebook is still the king or the queen of all social media. Despite the popularity of Twitter and Snapchat, especially amongst young people and particularly college students, Facebook has way more users in way more countries. And one of the reasons for that is probably that Facebook has the greatest, quote, social presence. Social presence. That's a concept you'll recognize from our chapter readings for today because social presence is all about how rich a medium allows a person to present themselves when they present themselves to you on the social medium. So, in other words, are you able to detect their tone? Are you able to see their facial expressions? Are you able to listen to their own chosen words? Are you able to see anything else about their mannerisms that give you the sense that they are really there, even though they are not? We know, for example, that you cannot smell a person on social media yet, although this may be something in the future. Who knows where this is taking us? But you can see a person, see them move as you are seeing me, etc., and that's social presence. This is one of the concepts that's discussed in our reading for today, which I really consider to be a mistitled chapter. The chapter is called Message Types, but I really think that this chapter is more about social media platforms, so that's the way that I'm going to approach the video lecture. And the next concept that I want to talk about gets at that. This concept is called temporal structure. Temporal structure. And it is all about the time, that's what that word temp means, all about the time in which you have a communication exchange with somebody on social media. And the time is broken down specifically into asynchronous time and synchronous time. Asynchronous and synchronous. Synchronous is where you speak to a person in real time. You're there with them, like when you FaceTime somebody. It comes from when you meet a person on the sidewalk, whatever, you have a conversation with them, it's in real time. Asynchronous communication was made possible by electronic communication because it takes a while to travel. Actually, you can say that envelopes and printed mail also made asynchronous communication forms possible as well. It's the idea that when content is sent out, it is not responded to right away. So like when you leave a message on somebody's voicemail and they call you back the next day, that's asynchronous. When you send an email and a person emails you a couple hours later, that's asynchronous. When you send a text and somebody's phone was dead and they plug it back in, get it charged back up, and then respond to your text the next day, it's asynchronous communication. Social media have, depending on the social media platform, have various uses of these kinds of communication. Facebook, again, to talk about that, has both, right? It has the ability to post a comment and then to come back later and decide you're going to check and see if anybody's replied to that comment, and that's maybe taken place 2-3 days later. But Facebook also has the instant messaging app, and you can even call people on Facebook. So it also has that synchronous form of communication. Now let's move on to symmetry, our next concept. Symmetry refers to is the communication that is going back and forth between the two parties equal? So do you speak as much as the person that you're talking to? Do you send out as much info, whether it's photos or videos or links, as they do? When they write sentences, are you writing as many sentences back? Do you make as many posts as they make posts that you see? This is what symmetry is all about. Now, I happen to follow a couple people on Twitter who are local celebrities, you could say. They are radio station personalities, and these people are mostly engaging in they're engaging in asymmetrical communication. It's one-sided because they're pushing out a lot of the content and they have many followers. So they're not going to go around and follow as many people as they are being followed by. So it's a good example of where social media are being funneled directly in one particular direction that's asymmetrical. All right, next up is the idea of permanence. Permanence refers to the degree to which a message is going to exist forever. So we know in Snapchat, for example, messages are 5-10 seconds long, but we also know that certain dimensions of Snapchat can be screen captured. So it's not technically impossible to preserve a Snapchat story or message forever, but it is unlikely. Whereas in a medium like Facebook, you have comments that go back and are automatically part of your history. And if you delete those comments, are they ever really completely deleted anyhow? Or are they captured somewhere out there in some deep vault in cyberspace? So this is another important dimension to consider about social media in terms of the platform, is how permanent are the messages once you put them on Twitter, Pinterest, Tumblr, Instagram, etc. Next up is the concept of mobility. Mobility refers to how easy it is to move around with your social media technology. Of course, the phone has made it very easy to take whatever you want with you, email, your Facebook, Twitter, and sending photos over text, etc. But it's still limited by camera quality, it's still limited by the battery getting worn out. It's still limited by you can't take it underwater unless you have a waterproof case. The phone is limited by a lot of things. So it's a very, very mobile medium, but it's not as mobile as you think. All right, next up is the concept of the internet. And the book takes a little bit of a diversion here. I'm not quite sure why the author organized the chapter this way, but the next piece of this book talks about the history of the internet. It does make an important point. It's trying to establish that the internet grew out of the U.S. Army, but despite the fact that it came out of ARPANET, the American Armed Services Network, based amongst a few universities in California, where each university was a node, and that node was where the email was first being tested. It was sent out between these nodes. ARPANET, despite coming from the military, actually became the forerunner for what is known as a very free and public medium. That's the internet. It was designed to be free. It was designed, when it comes right down to it, to be able to allow our nation's computers to speak with each other in the event of a nuclear strike from Russia. That was what the whole design was. So in order to be able to survive something like that, it had to have different nodes that the message could go to. If Philadelphia was out, it had to be able to go to Atlanta to get to Los Angeles. And that's how the ARPANET was designed, but it effectively made the internet for free. So we have a lot of expectations of the internet being free, but it also set it up to naturally be a social medium. When something is free, it has more of a way of bringing people together to explore its possibilities than when something is cost prohibitive or is difficult to use. Neither of which describe the internet. It became a free medium and one that almost everybody could hop on, so it naturally is a social medium. Now let's talk about the next concept, which is discussed in the book, and that is the concept of remediation. And remediation talks about how new media, I referred to this a little bit last time in my video lecture, how new media never really completely replace old media, but they both adapt to each other. And they use old forms in the new ways of the media dispersing content. So for example, in your D2L, a kind of social media platform, if you make a comment and then you want to edit that comment, where do you go? You go to the icon that's of a little quill pen. Now, nobody uses a quill pen anymore unless you're super, super old-fashioned or you're a calligrapher. But a quill pen is from like the 1800s. It's ink that you have to blot. So that's the icon that's used in a modern-day social media platform. Facebook, similarly, you want to tell somebody you're happy with what they just said, then you can give them a thumbs up, which is already established in a pre-made emoji for you to select. It's a very old way of communicating with somebody, though, and it's been remediated. That's what this concept is all about, remediating old tools and concepts and icons as part of the communication language of older media, remediating them and getting them into new media. All right, next up is now the book goes into a set of several really specific media platforms where social media also express their content, and let's just go through them. You've got social network sites. That's basically what you commonly consider to be your Facebook and your Twitter. I mean, that's what this whole class is all about. So that's not really necessary to go over here in a video lecture. But the next one, blogs, is. Blogs are very, very particular in terms of why people use them. You find journalists using them because they want to establish themselves as journalists and bring attention to their ideas, their style of journalism, etc. You also find people blogging who are very political or very environmental or very cause-oriented. They want to affect change. You find some people who are just plain exhibitionists. They want to kind of give people a glimpse into their personal life, so they kind of write a diary online. That's what their blog is. Blogs, interestingly enough, are asynchronous, to go back to a concept we talked about earlier, meaning that you go on and check them and the person doesn't have to be communicating them live. It's one of the attractions of a blog, which is, by the way, short for weblog. That's where a blog comes from, weblog, logging in your activities on the web. All right, next up are message boards. In my own personal life, I've seen message boards decline in their use and importance. It used to be if you wanted to be a motorcycle enthusiast, you could go to a message board and find a bike that was your bike and then go and see what you could do to that bike based on what other people had done and problems that they had faced, et cetera, et cetera. That's not really how people go to look for information on the web anymore because it's just too easy to find it through other routes. But still, message boards do serve a purpose. You'll find that legacy media, for example, like newspapers, they'll post an article, one of their articles online, and then they'll allow respondents to go in there and comment on those articles. That is a kind of a message board. And you have message boards also for companies that are trying to reduce the flow into the call centers and getting people taken away from doing other things, and instead have kind of question answers on demands, FAQs, so to speak. And that's what message boards sometimes serve for companies. Next up as a concept is chat rooms. Chat rooms usually have some kind of private or some kind of prerequisite membership requirement before you can get into them. You have to pay a fee. You have to have you have to be a certain age, 18, 21. You have to have a certain belief system that fits in with the person who approves you. Chat rooms are very, very big in the sex world. It's a place where people go to express themselves in so-called privacy. But chat rooms require a certain membership. And then once you're in them, it has that feeling that there are walls that are around you, even if there aren't. All right, next up is feeds. Feeds are continuous sources of social media content. We have probably the biggest one is the Facebook news feed. People get very irritated when somebody else, quote, blows up their feed, meaning hogging up too much space in what's supposed to be like a downspout of water that's got all kinds of dimensions to it. That's what the feed is. It has a source, all your favorite sources of information. But you can design your own feeds in social media. I used to have an app on my phone called Pulse, and I created a feed that would supply me with several news sources. I like to always be knowing what's going on, and especially politically. So I have MSNBC, Fox, CNN, BBC, try to get as much variety as possible, Huffington Post, trying to get all that into my feed. So feeds are continuous, Facebook probably being the most popular one. And then finally, for our final concept today, we have content sharing. Content sharing is where you have point-to-point sharing between devices, and they're going into each other's memory, either because you've set them up to do that automatically or because you're physically doing it yourself, and they're sharing content. We see this in terms of file sharing for movies, people downloading movies illegally. They don't want to pay for it, so they go in and share it with somebody else. Same with music. This is part of content sharing, but content sharing is also legal. It's legal over LAN networks established inside of companies and public institutions where information needs to be shared, and creative designs and emails, etc. ESU has content sharing among its computers. All right, so that's going to wrap up all the different ways that social media push out content according to their platform restrictions. I hope that you're starting to dig deeper on your own, going into your own social media platform, knowing that you're going to be working with Twitter, going to be working with Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, etc., all summer long in this course. And you're really asking these questions of yourself because you're the expert. You're the one who's using this social media platform. And other than that, I hope you have a great day.